Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. So, a few weeks ago I did a video about how the new quote-unquote progressive agenda in creating entertainment is to go back to nostalgia and then give the soft sell for the progressive ideology, which is basically what they used to do within the 90s, early 2000s. And that is the retreat position of the people who make current mainstream entertainment. But what I didn't mention in that video really was what I saw as the counter to this retreat into nostalgia by the mainstream entertainment. And quite honestly, what I see on the other side of the fence as the counter to this nostalgia bait is anti-woke entertainment. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean entertainment that doesn't even have a hint of woke, quote-unquote, progressive ideology in it whatsoever. And yes, that would mean going back to a time, even the early 2000s, 1990s, where there was a hint of this kind of progressive ideology for most people there. They didn't quite see it. Even that is going to be too much. Even that will not be tolerated in the entertainment sphere. Now, it's not just going to be the entertainment sphere, but certainly in the entertainment sphere. And quite honestly, I see the end result of this kind of anti-woke entertainment, certainly if it is to avoid becoming pure ideology simply in the other direction, is for entertainment to concentrate on ideas of the true, the good, and the beautiful. And for me, I think what is most necessary, what society is most hungry for right now, will be heroic stories. And those heroic stories will help right the ship. And on that note, before I proceed any further, there are 2 links in the description and the pinned comment for my 3 graphic novels. They are stories which do concentrate on the traditional idea of a hero, a virtuous individual who needs to struggle through pain and adversity in their attempt to serve justice, courage, etc. And you're looking at some of the beautiful art from those books in the background. So if any of that looks or sounds appealing to you at all, click on one of those links in the description or the pinned comment and go on over and see if one of my graphic novels are for you. But back to my main topic. Now, I want to break down what exactly I mean by anti-woke entertainment and why I believe this is the wave of the future. And quite honestly, when thinking about this, a scene from, I think it was Star Trek V, kept popping up in my mind. It was where Spock says to Kirk, "Only Nixon can go to China." He says it almost as a proverb. And what exactly does this proverb mean? Well, it means the fact that during Nixon's later years in life, the only person that the American public would trust to go and deal with China, both politically and economically, was Nixon. Now, you can go ahead and argue the merits of that type of thinking one way or another in the comments if you want. But again, the point of the saying is the fact that the American public did not trust anyone else to go and deal with China because someone else might be deceived by them. Someone else might go easy on them. Someone else might feel sorry for them. But Nixon? No. Nixon had a almost guttural revulsion to the communist Chinese, and so therefore, if you want to send someone to go and deal with them, go send Nixon. And we've gotten to a point, culturally again, where people, the common, ordinary people of America, will not trust anyone with their entertainment anymore unless, at the very least, they erase all hints of quote-unquote progressive and woke ideology. Now, to take a step back and to see why it is this way, well, it is this way because of the way that quote-unquote progressive woke entertainment actually portrayed itself and tried to operate. One of the things I go over on this channel over and over again is the fact that your quote-unquote progressive woke ideology is a utopian ideology. And it's a utopian ideology based upon the idea that the way they can assert that there is a utopia, a heaven on earth coming, is not to say that mankind can build a utopia, but is to say that if we wish this utopia to come about, we must build mankind to fit into it. But one of the fundamental, necessary things in that kind of thinking is the fact that you can't acknowledge that there is any kind of fixed human nature if you think you can change man into something that's going to fit into a utopia. Because utopia is a box for round pegs, but mankind is a square peg. Therefore, you have to whittle mankind and every individual within it down into a round peg in order to get him to fit into utopia. And again, that necessitates denial of any kind of fixed human nature, because that would be an impediment to shaping and molding mankind into whatever shape necessary to get him into that slot. But the point is, how does this play out? Well, it plays out in these people who believe this quote-unquote progressive ideology in thinking about things almost the exact opposite way that normal people think about things. Normally, and certainly throughout history, the way to think about mankind is to say, yes, there's something fixed there within mankind that makes him man. Therefore, we have to work with that and create, no matter what it is, create laws, create stories, create culture, doesn't matter, but create with that in mind so that we can revolve around those fixed points. But your progressive ideology is quite the opposite. They're saying there is no fixed points, therefore, we must establish something similar to a fixed point, so there is some kind of stability, and we do that, your progressive ideologues do that, through socialization, through the manipulation of society in a totalitarian way. That is to say, they cannot allow anything to counteract their message. There must only be their message, because that must be the only thing that people hear, only thing that people experience, in order to bend and shape their minds, their lives, their actions into the shape that the ideology tells them to go in. And if you're listening to my channel, I would dare say that you have seen this totalitarian mindset take over something that you once valued. But again, the point is to follow that down through its logical conclusion. These quote-unquote progressive ideologues, in so many ways, but again, we're just talking about the entertainment sector right now, but have just tried to pound their message into mankind, into everyone, into you and me. Why? Because they're trying to pound you into a shape that will eventually lead to the ability of mankind to fit into a utopia. But lucky for us, yes, there is such a thing as a human nature. There is fixed points within human nature that will not move. And what more, we use as a basis for statements like, every man is endowed by his creator with certain unalienable rights. And it doesn't matter if you express it in those terms or not. It just goes to show that there is some fixed point there that we can point to and say, this is a human being. And that fixed point allows us to understand that that totalitarian way of pounding on you with ideological, societal forces is not going to shape you into what they think you ought to be, but is simply going to create, and has created within society, an almost Pavlovian response of revulsion to woke progressive ideology. And very briefly, for those who are not familiar with the term, Pavlov was a scientist who rang a bell and then gave a dog some food, and in his experiment, he eventually stopped giving the dog the food, but he kept on ringing the bell, and whenever the dog heard the bell ringing, their digestive system started to work automatically, even though the food wasn't there after a while. Their bodies were prepared for food. So there was an instinctual response to the ringing of the bell. And so it has become an instinctual response within the normal, everyday American to be disgusted by your woke progressive ideology. And again, it all comes from that fixed point of human nature, from the normal, everyday human being looking at what these people are trying to do and saying, no, this is the fixed part of human nature, whether you think it or not, whether you instinctually know it or not, it's stuck there in your mind because it is reality. And you're saying to yourself, that's not reality. What you're presenting me within your entertainment is not reality. It's not normal. There's something wrong with it. I get that comment from people all the time. They say to me, I never understood why I felt this way, why there was something scratching at the back of my mind, but you have just explained it. Although I knew on some level that something wasn't right here. And so when these progressive woke ideologues try to take what is normal, what everyone knows as normal, not because they've been socialized into thinking it is normal, but because we all know through our simple existence that this is how human beings exist, when they try to subvert that, when they tried to, I should say, subvert that norm, take that normal, turn it on its head, and make it into something perverse, then yeah, the normal, everyday individual says, I'm disgusted by that. And it has happened so much through this totalitarian socialization that they have tried to pound into your skull and mine and everyone else's through controlling everything within the mainstream entertainment sphere, and again, in other spheres as well, but we're just concentrating on entertainment, that now the Pavlovian response for the normal everyday human being, the normal everyday American, is to look at any piece of entertainment, and even if there is a hint of your woke progressive ideology, to follow their gut feeling of something's wrong here, I'm going to walk in the other direction. And you can see this really in some of the statements just coming out by, well, let's just call them normies on the internet. Not people like you or me, people who have been following this takeover of entertainment for a long time, but people who would have said in the 90s or the 2000s that, yeah, sure, you can have your woke progressive ideology. It can only go so far, though. You have to stop here. Now, I've done videos about the fact that they will never stop here. There is no far enough for these people. It will always be a continual drive. Enough is never enough for them. But a lot of the normies would say, yeah, I was okay with them doing X or Y, but they just took it too far. Even people like that are starting to admit that, for example, movies, which in their estimation aren't really that bad, have completely bombed now just because they had a hint of woke progressive ideology. And that's the cue. That's the cue for, yes, normal everyday Americans have walked away from this type of entertainment because they know they're going to get garbage. They know on some level it's going to disgust them, so why even bother giving it a chance? It was funny because the exact same thing happened to me over the last week. Usually, in order to try and keep up with various kinds of storytelling, I don't so much watch entire programs. I watch synopses of programs because I just don't have the time to watch entire shows sometimes, especially not to take a chance on watching entire shows when, again, I think it's going to be a dumpster fire. And I clicked on one about a show that I had never heard of, just recently coming out, and I started to listen to the synopsis of the entire thing. And as they were showing pictures of the animation in the background, because it was an animated show, although it was high science fiction and fantasy, they were showing the characters. And some of the characters, which I assumed from the visuals, because I couldn't hear them speak, to be male, turned out that they were female. And I said to myself, okay, I know where this is going. And it went in the exact direction that I thought it would. No, it wasn't as heavy-handed as some of your progressive entertainment that you have gotten over the last 10, 15 years, but it certainly went there in the end. And in my mind, in my evaluation of storytelling, which is based upon ideas of truth, which is the way Western storytelling has existed for thousands of years, going back to the Aristotelian logical breakdown of what a story was 2,400 years ago, him basing his analysis off stories 800 years older than he was, I look at it and say, yeah, since it had those earmarks in it, it was a good thing I didn't watch it because it has no merit. There's nothing there that I need to analyze in order to understand its kind of storytelling because it's not based upon anything real. Or in other words, it's not based upon any ideas, any realities of the true, the good, the beautiful. Therefore, even though it might make a flash in the pan, it will not continue to exist in any way in the future with any relevance as a piece of storytelling. And that has been my mindset, really, since the mid-90s, when I started to simply excise certain types of storytelling from my life. It was because I didn't have a word for it back at that time. It was simply, I don't want to be preached to anymore. I'm not going to consume X kind of entertainment anymore. That's where the normal, everyday American has gotten to by this point. Sure, it's instinctual for a lot of people, again, because of the pounding that they have endured with your woke ideologues trying to drill it into their head, but they've gotten to the point where if there is even a hint of woke progressive ideology, they're just going to turn away. And that is what I mean by anti-woke. It is not a movement in itself. It is a reaction to the subversion of what everyone knows is normal. And there's the rub. What is normal? Well, again, if we want to figure out what that is, we need to concentrate on what is objective. And objectively, how we understand the universe and mankind's part in it, we understand that what is normal is derived from the first principles of logical and rational thinking of what is real, and what is real is true. That standard of truth gives us a norm, gives us principles of how the world and human beings work. That's normal. And that's why I'm talking about the true, the good, and the beautiful. Because we must concentrate on what is true. Again, most of us understand, whether it be instinctually or not, that there is some standard of truth. The very statement that the progressive ideologues are trying to push, that there is no truth, is a self-defeating argument. If you're saying there is no truth, you're stating that as if it were true. And if that is true, then there is a truth. Therefore, you have just defeated your own argument. So there is some kind of standard of truth. But these progressive ideologues not only ignore the truth, but actively try to destroy it in every way, shape, or form. This leads to, again, their subversion and grotesque manipulation of what is normal. And the cry from many people who call themselves centrists is the fact that what I'm describing is simply ideology in the opposite direction. It's simply instinctual thinking in the opposite direction. So it's the exact same as your progressive ideologues, it's just in the other direction. And I would say no. And we have to make sure that when we present whatever it is we are presenting and creating, you say no. Why? Because the opposite direction of progressive ideologues who try to destroy the truth is something based on the truth, something based on what is real, which goes back to, once again, as I said, that ancient definition of how we've always understood storytelling within Western civilization, that it is a reflection of what is real. This is the basis of Aristotle's logical analysis of storytelling 2,400 years ago. He being one of the intellectual pillars upon which Western civilization is built. And so it is when I speak about storytelling, it's based upon this ancient idea that has run straight through Western civilization, that storytelling, if it is to have merit, is to be based upon the real, is to concentrate on ideas that bring out the true, the good, and the beautiful. And such it is with the idea of hero and the presentation, once again, that Aristotle gave us 2,400 years ago of the idea of a traditional hero. Why? Because a hero is a paragon of virtue. And those virtues are preceded necessarily by a mindset of right reason. You cannot reach those virtues at all unless you're already at the station of right reason. That is to say, you have your reason in accord with reality. And so it is a simple, and I would even say a marvelous and joyous thing, that if we want to ensure that people, ourselves included, and everyday Americans, through their entertainment, don't simply become ideologues in a different direction when we choose what we are going to be entertained by, or we create something as a piece of entertainment. We orient ourselves towards something which is heroic. We orient ourselves towards something which is true, something which is good, something which is beautiful. So, if I've given you anything new to think about, hit like, hit the shield in the lower right-hand corner of your screen to subscribe, and leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about all this. And don't forget, there are 2 links in the description and the pinned comment for my 3 graphic novels, stories that concentrate on the heroic ideal and the traditional way of telling a story. And if any of that looks or sounds appealing to you at all, click on one of those links in the description or the pinned comment and go on over and order yourself a copy of one of my graphic novels today. All right, I'll leave it there. I'll see you later. Bye.